Everybody. Just wanted to send you a little update here and encouragement toward the end of your week. You can see a lot going on behind me here at the church today. So construction continues that way and a lot taking place out there on this beautiful day. I'm going to move inside so you can hopefully hear me a little better. Just for your encouragement, I discovered a couple of things about the construction and talking to some of the folks out there. I met one guy, his name is Nate, and Nate is a pastor actually of a church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And so he's a framer, and it was really encouraging to talk to him, and he's a believer in a gospel preaching church, and it's just nice to have guys like that around, and so I've enjoyed having some conversations with him. In addition, I met the owner of the electrical company that's doing all the electrical work. It's a Cornerstone Electric, and the owner was here, and he kind of pulled me aside, and we were talking, and he is a believer as well, and he knows the Lord. He's actually oversees like a satellite group in Haverhill there, kind of as a pastor, and he's a believer, believes the gospel, and so it's just really neat, I think, the way the Lord has brought men like that to us, and that this work is a little more than just another job for them. They see it as the Lord's work, and they're glad to do it, and that's why this electrical guy bid the job. So very thankful that the Lord is doing that and bringing those kinds of people here to help us with this project. Just a couple of more announcements for you, and I'll give you a little devotional at the end. We have heard from the town that Cyril's Chapel, where we typically meet for Easter, will be closed and not be available for Easter Sunday. So as of right now, we're still able to meet on Easter, which is April 12th, and we're planning on that, but we're going to have to plan on 2 services here in our current facility. So I know that's not ideal. It'd be very tight. Maybe we'd think of 3 services. I don't know, but we'll make it happen. And really, there's no other public venue that would be available. So right now, we're planning on 2 services. And we will let the appropriate people know if that changes, but for right now it's 2, and we'll just make the best of it. Hopefully we'll be able to meet then and be able to do that. So just wanted to make you aware of that. In addition, I think along with this video, there is a link that perhaps Pastor Andrew will send to you to a hymn that we like to sing, "What God Ordains is Always Good," and I've been listening to that. And it's been ministering to my heart this week. And so there will be a link to a nice recording of that for you to listen to. We'll probably put that in the order of service this Sunday as well for our worship guide. So that'll be coming your way. I want to give thanks to Pastor Andrew. Most of the technical stuff that you see going on here behind the scenes, that's him doing a lot of hard work and putting that in. So I'm very thankful for the work that he does to get us all up to speed on that and try to keep us connected virtually. So I appreciate that. And then this coming Lord's Day, we're going to be studying a passage in John chapter 6. It is the passage of the Lord walking on the water, and that's recorded in John 6, Matthew 14, and Mark chapter 6 as well. So you might want to put all those passages together. And I'm going to preach to you a message entitled Faith Cultivated in Crisis, and how God actually looks to strengthen our faith in moments of crisis and difficulty. So that will be coming this Sunday. Let me just share some devotional thoughts for you in closing, some things to think about at this time. Obviously, one thing that's been on our minds is quarantine and social distancing. I was thinking about that this week, and the Bible talks about social distancing. In fact, in Leviticus chapters 13 and 14, we are told of regulations under the Mosaic law regarding leprosy. That was a highly contagious disease, and in that passage, the Lord gives instructions to the priests that when there's a suspicion of leprosy because of a spot on the skin or some garment, that there's to be a 7-day quarantine to see if that's exactly what it is. And because of the nature of the contagiousness of the disease, to keep people away until they've discerned exactly what it is. I was interested to find out this week that that passage in Leviticus 13 and 14 is actually the oldest human record that we have of quarantine. So all that displays for us is God's wisdom, that God knows about the nature of infectious disease. He knows how rapidly it can spread. And God had given regulations regarding one such disease all the way back in Leviticus 13 and 14. And as I thought about that, I was also intrigued by the story that we read in Mark chapter 1, where Jesus actually is greeted or called unto by a man who had leprosy. Let me just read that for you. In Mark chapter 1, in verse 40, we read, "And a leper came to him," that is to Jesus, "imploring him, and kneeling said to him, 'If you will, you can make me clean.'" So here's a man with great faith. He has this disease that makes him unclean. He's ostracized from society. Think his whole life is isolation. His whole life is away from society. And he, in great faith, comes to Jesus, certainly at a distance, and says, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." He understands who Jesus is. And what's amazing is in verse 41, we're told, "Moved with pity, he," that is Jesus, "stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, 'I will be clean.'" Now, this man maybe had not had physical touch by another human being, who knows how long, years, decades. And now Jesus comes to the man and he puts his hand upon him. Jesus didn't have to do that. He could have just spoken the word. He could have said something and the man would have been cleansed. But instead, he uses this means to heal the man, and he puts his hand on him and he touches him. And it says he did that because he was moved with pity. He was moved with compassion. Certainly, Jesus felt in his heart this man's plight, what he was dealing with his own isolation and this terrible disease. And so Jesus has compassion, and because of his compassion, it moves him to action, and he touches the man, and the man is cleansed. Now, according to the Mosaic law, if somebody had come into contact with a leprous person and touched them, they themselves would be unclean. Of course, the amazing thing is in this story is that when Jesus touches the unclean man, instead of Jesus becoming unclean, the man who was unclean is cleansed. And what is this but a beautiful picture of our coming to Jesus? All of us have a disease. The disease is sin. And sin infects all of us, and we are all unclean before God. And yet Jesus, moved with compassion and love and pity for us, he did something. He sacrificed himself and gave his life. And when we come into contact with Jesus, when we call upon him in faith, believing that he can save us, Jesus' touch cleanses us. His blood washes away our sin, and we are made clean, no longer ostracized and isolated from God, but now the very Spirit of Christ living within us, and the Holy Spirit giving us an assurance that we are accepted and we are God's children. And what a difference that makes in our lives. What a joy it is to have that understanding. And this is the story of great compassion of Jesus. And we see it very appropriate in our lives as we consider our own plight. And that Jesus, in our faith coming to him and his reaching out and cleansing us, and saving us from our sin, that we too can have acceptance with God, and we can have acceptance into God's family and call each other brother and sister. So I'm thankful for these thoughts that I've been thinking about this week, and I trust they'll be an encouragement to you and a blessing to you. I trust that you all are staying encouraged during this time. We've tried to get together in a prayer meeting of some kind or growth group of some kind to keep contact and praying with one another. Let's continue to do that, and let's strive reaching out. I've been very encouraged by hearing the way people are reaching out in various ways, staying in touch. Let's continue to do that. Certainly that honors the Lord, and it's something that we can do to help one another at this time. So God bless you. I'm praying for all of you, and love you and look forward to the time that we can meet again and gather again as God's people.